Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tidemark webinar on Getting Granular with Tidemark Profitability Modeling and Analytics. Wanted to let everyone know that this session is being recorded, and if you have any questions as we're going through the session today, please enter them in the questions panel that you'll find within your GoToWebinar meeting control panel. So let's go ahead and start by talking a little bit about profitability within Tidemark. So we hear from many of our customers and prospective customers and from the industry at large that there are quite a few common challenges that organizations find with profitability management. Many organizations are still having to go through a very significant amount of manual effort to leverage data that they have in their existing systems. And the level of detail of that data does not necessarily allow them to get to the types of profitability measures that they'd like to achieve. As well, there are many organizations who are still leveraging Excel, and Excel doesn't necessarily have the power necessary to really support comprehensive profitability management. As well, predictive measures for profit are very hard to come by. Most profitability analysis tends to rely on historical information rather than really leveraging that historical data to then predict what might be most beneficial for the organization in the future. And then finally, once profitability analysis is done, many organizations don't have the necessary touch points to actually act on those findings to really make the changes that will impact the business and then improve profits within the organization. Now, Tidemark actually provides a portfolio of finance business applications that is designed to support profitability areas. What you're seeing now is really a representation of what Tidemark is and what Tidemark has to offer. And Tidemark actually provides a very comprehensive platform. And this is a platform that's really been born in the cloud. We did not start as a legacy platform, a legacy on-premise platform, and then move to the cloud. We were born and raised in the cloud. And everything within Tidemark is designed around your business process. We put your business process first. And while we provide a number of packaged applications, those are all configurable to a very significant extent so that they can be tailored to meet your specific business needs. As well, everything that we do within the Tidemark platform is designed to really push anything in finance outside of the four walls of finance and really drive engagement at the edges of your organization so that all of the decisions, analysis, and planning can be done by the people who are closest to what's really happening in the business. We also provide a very comprehensive and easy to understand consumer-like user interface. And this is a user interface that is available both in a web browser, which is where I'll be doing the demonstration today, but also available on your mobile device. So wherever you need to do the work, you are able to do it at any time. And finally, Tidemark's technology really differentiates us in that we are really the only provider out there who is not using a cube-based environment. You know, there are inherent limitations in a cube-based environment, limitations when it comes to dimensionality of data and volume of data. And Tidemark's computational grid computing platform eliminates all of those limitations and gives you the power that you need to run your business. So with that Tidemark platform as the foundation, again, we provide a number of comprehensive packaged applications that you'll see listed here. And we're really going to be honing in and focusing in on profitability modeling and analytics today. Now, what is Tidemark Profitability and Modeling Analytics? Profitability modeling and analytics really all about? Well, it's really all about providing you with the environment that you need to collect all of the data to drive your profitability analysis and giving you the tools that you need to drive or allocate costs down to the level that you need. You'll see how this works when we get into the demonstration. We also provide you with some prepackaged analytics to help guide you through analysis of the results of that data. And then we also provide you the ability to integrate this information directly into your other business processes, for example, budgeting, forecasting, etc. All of this really happens on that very flexible computing environment that I just talked about. So some of the things that you'll really gain by leveraging profitability modeling and analytics from Tidemark is the fact that you'll be able to start from really a predefined process. This is a predefined process built upon experience with our customer base, as well as with our best practices that we have learned from our years of experience in this particular area. And we really, again, allow you to expand and extend all of this to the edges of the enterprise so that you can have all of the right people involved. Because we're leveraging this packaged application, you're able to get up and running with profitability, modeling, and analytics extremely quickly, and you're able to configure it to the specific needs of your business. And then all of this comes at a low cost with a very high ROI because everything is managed in the cloud. As well, all of the Tidemark application capabilities are included with your subscription to Tidemark. You're not limited to just profitability analysis. So now let's go ahead and jump into the demonstration. So we are now looking at the Tidemark application, and specifically we are looking at the profitability packaged application. Now, this packaged application includes a number of processes, and we're really going to focus in on two during our short demonstration today. We're going to focus on configuring a profit model and analyzing profitability. And really, again, the whole purpose of this packaged application is to provide an environment where we can analyze by costs, by product, and by customer, and determine overall profitability. So we're going to start the process by looking at the steps you might go through to configure your profit model. And this is really all about making sure that you have the right data to do your profitability analysis. You would import your data into Tidemark. Most organizations will import that data leveraging our embedded tool called SnapLogic to extract, load, and transform the data, but you also have the option to load that data manually. And then once the data is in the system, you're able to do your profitability analysis. And what we're looking at here is our core profit model, and this is your core profitability data, essentially your P&L. And we have revenue by product and customer. So most organizations, of course, are able to capture and provide revenue by product and customer, but the tricky part comes when you get to costs. Because costs typically come in at different levels. It really comes in at the customer and product level. Well, this is one of those areas where Tidemark can really help. What Tidemark allows you to do is run a number of native business methods that you see down below that allow you to calculate and allocate costs at the appropriate level using the appropriate calculations for your organization. So this is an inherent capability with Tidemark. And once you've gone through and done those allocations, you can then see the impact and how those costs are spread across your products and customers. So if we look at the profit model, I've already run all of those allocations. And if I would drill down to any level of granularity within my products, I'll drill down into my paper goods product line, I can see how all of the costs have calculated out appropriately, and then how the resulting contribution margin and contribution margin percent has been calculated. Now, the rest of the steps in this particular process, and I can outline all the steps up above, are really designed to allow you to review and adjust any of the inputs into your profitability process that are necessary. So we can take a quick look at reviewing products. And what we see here is a list of all of our products, as well as the direct labor rate, as well as the product unit cost and unit price. So these are all inputs into our process. And this is a nice example of how we support activity-based costing, as these inputs are factored into the allocations. Now, these panels and all the others that allow you to review and or adjust these inputs, they can be locked down so you're just using actual numbers, or you also have the option to leave them open, as I've done here, because anything you see shaded in yellow means it's editable. That means I have the ability to tweak the model. And what this does is this gives me the flexibility to actually model multiple profitability scenarios. And as I mentioned, you have the ability to review and or adjust the data, amongst all these different areas, customers, sales, etc. Now, one of the unique capabilities that Tidemark also includes is the ability to do some statistical analysis to actually identify which drivers correlate most closely with one another. And once all of the data is resident within Tidemark, I can analyze this data in any way that I need. So what we're looking at here is what we call a storyline. And a storyline is a way of providing really simple to understand infographic style visualizations of data. And you'll actually see this used throughout the Tidemark application. And what we're seeing here in this correlation storyline is the ability to select a metric. Here we happen to have gross revenue selected. And then I'm able to understand the other metrics that actually correlate with that metric. Some of those correlations might be expected. Some of them might not be expected. And really, this is something that you can't do with a cube-based environment. With a cube, you have to know what those correlations are. Tidemark actually can help you discover what those correlations are. So in my example here, perhaps I'd like to understand what correlates most closely with advertising expenses, for example. So as I select advertising expenses, the correlations are then updated. So I can see, for example, that sales units correlates very closely with advertising expenses, which is good, right? We should be able to see the impact of our advertising expenses on sales. But what's interesting is that advertising expense also correlates pretty closely with labor rates. That's interesting. It might be something for us to investigate it. And if you really think about it, this type of correlational analysis can really be used to do some very interesting types of analysis within your organization. It can help you understand things such as gaps between regions, gaps between what might be selling at different outlets or to different customers, and then in this example, tie that back to advertising. And it's a very powerful capability to be able to use statistics to actually identify the drivers that you should be using in your cost model. So that's really how you would configure your profit model and really start to be prepared to do the analysis. Now we can actually move over and take a look at what we can do with all of this data and how we can analyze it. So this is another process that's part of the application, this one really built around analysis. And this is really where self-service for your business users can really come into play. As I mentioned during the introduction, Tidemark has really been designed in such a way that analysis or planning of any type doesn't have to be limited just to the finance professionals. Business users can actually be given access to this, and they have the ability to do their own analysis. So here again, we're looking at a storyline. This type of visualization can be used in a wide variety of ways to help you understand your data. Again, it's an infographic style visualization. And what we're seeing here is our key profitability metric for all of our products. So you'll notice I have all products selected, but I could easily drill down and slice just into a particular product line or even down to an individual product. I also have the ability to do this type of analysis, as I mentioned, across multiple scenarios. So I'm not limited to just one profitability scenario. I could tweak the model, as I mentioned previously, and see what the impact of some of those tweaks would be on my overall profitability if we would implement them. So what do we see in this storyline? Well, because we're looking at profitability, we happen to be really focused on contribution margin. This is really the key metric that we happen to be using. Now, we're using contribution margin and contribution margin percent as the key metric that we're looking at, but this could easily be modified to be using gross profit or gross profit margin if that's a more accurate measure of profitability for your particular organization. That's an example of the configurability of this packaged application. Now, as we look at the storyline, we see our overall contribution margin, we see our revenue and our costs and the resulting contribution margin. We also see the impact of the top 5 and bottom 5 brands, their relative contribution to the contribution margin, as well as the same when looking at our customers. Now, as we continue to move through the storyline, we see a ranking of contribution margin by various elements. So this first example we see is contribution margin ranking by sales rep. So we see our top and bottom sales rep as defined by contribution margin contribution. Next, we see a map. This map shows us the states that provided the most significant contribution margin. We also see a ranking by customer, as well as by brand. So you'll notice that we really have a large number of options when it comes to how you visualize your data, all designed to really help you understand where the most significant and the least significant contributors are, breaking out by segment as well. Now, as I mentioned, this can, of course, be configured to show the elements that are important to your organization. So again, while this is a packaged application, you do have the flexibility to really configure this so that it meets your business's needs. Now, this process also includes a number of other predefined ways to analyze profitability. Another great example is the ability to compare scenarios. And this is an example of how you can easily do some variance analysis between multiple profitability planning scenarios or analysis scenarios. You'll see here that we're actually doing a variance analysis between our baseline scenario, which is what we've been seeing thus far, but also another scenario that we've modeled, in this case a what-if likely scenario. So we're able to adjust the inputs into our profitability data and then run the analysis to see the impact of those modifications. And now we're able to analyze the results in comparison to our baseline, which might be based on our actuals in this example. Now here I happen to be doing this variance analysis across these two planning scenarios. This could very easily be current year versus prior year, current quarter versus prior quarter, etc. Whatever points of comparison will be meaningful to your organization. And as I look at this particular comparison, I'm able to drill down, in this case, through my product hierarchy and get down to a very, very granular level. In fact, I can get down to the SKU level profitability doing this type of variance analysis. That's another example of how Tidemark really provides you unlimited data storage and unlimited dimensionality and the benefits of that you can get down to as granular level as you need within the organization. As well, as I work my way through this variance analysis, Tidemark is automatically identifying the most significant variances for me and pushing them over to the left-hand side so I don't have to go hunting for those variance analysis. This is a really great way to illustrate how an ordinary business user can actually be guided through this analysis so that they can really be close to the numbers themselves. They don't necessarily have to rely on the finance professionals to do all of this for them. Another way that we enable all users to do their own analysis is by embedding this concept called in-context analysis throughout Tidemark. This is available wherever you are within the system. And this really allows any user to ask different questions of the data and instantly get a chart or graph presenting that data back. So let's say I wanted to look at a different metric because this particular panel is really built around contribution margin. Maybe I'm most interested in net revenue. So maybe I'd like to see what the net revenue contribution is for each of our customers. I see that detailed very nicely with just a simple click. I read a simple sentence, I make a choice, and I see my data. I also have the flexibility to see that as a trend. So again, Tidemark makes it extremely easy for any user to do their own analysis. Now, one of the last views that we'll take a look at is an example of several what we call grid views that are summarizing the data or actually providing me access to much more detailed data that was summarized in that storyline. And as I look at these more detailed grid-based views, I really have the ability to further filter and refine my analysis by drilling into a specific product. So maybe I want to see this again just for my paper goods product line. Or I want to drill down into a particular customer, for example. So I've got the ability to really drill down and see the detailed numbers in whatever combinations of ways I need to see this for my customer. As whenever I'm looking at data, even in a grid form, Tidemark actually provides you with the ability to see that data visually. So let's say I wanted to see my revenue numbers for a few quarters. I simply grab or lasso that data, and again, Tidemark is going to instantly visualize that for me. Yet another way that we really make this accessible to all users within the organization. So that really concludes the short demonstration that we've planned today. So now I will take a look at any of the questions that have come in, and I will be able to answer those. So one of the questions that came in was around driver-based costs, and I think we did address that, and that we do absolutely have the ability to support driver-based costing as well. So I showed a quick example of that early in the demonstration. The next question is around what is the amount of data that Tidemark can analyze, and that pivot tables are limited to 1 million records. There is no limit to the amount of data that Tidemark can analyze. This is due to our cloud grid-based computational platform. We've really eliminated all of the restrictions that are typically placed upon volume of data in a cube-based environment. So you have no limits. We are able to manage really unlimited amounts of data. There is a question around the cost of the Tidemark application. That is something that we would typically address with you individually, but in a very simple term, it is a subscription-based service based upon the number of users that you have. And we would be happy to follow up with you with more detail on your specific situation there. Another question around, do you have experience with public budgeting? Tidemark actually has experience with a broad range of both public and private sector organizations, and we'd love to talk with you individually about our specific experience there. We have another question asking, how do we work with Workday? That's a great question. We are actually the only certified partner with Workday when it comes to financial planning and analytics. We leverage the Workday API to do a dynamic integration, so we're able to accept data dynamically from Workday as well as dynamically push data back to Workday seamlessly. It is a pre-built integration managed by Tidemark and Workday, so all of the effort is removed from our customers when it comes to integrating with Workday. We have another question when it comes to how many dimensions can Tidemark handle in planning models. And the answer to that as well is unlimited. Again, because of our cloud grid-based computational platform, we do not have any limits as to the number of dimensions that we can support in planning or analytical models. A great example of this is, we just answered a question previously around Workday, and Workday customers tend to have really significant numbers of dimensions due to the work tag functionality within Workday. We have many Workday customers, all who are able to support all of their work tags within Tidemark without any issue. Again, we have no limit when it comes to dimensionality. There's another question around what are the simulation capabilities within Tidemark around making forecast models. And Tidemark actually fully supports the ability to run simulations. We support multiple scenarios within Tidemark, and we give you the ability to have, again, an unlimited number of forecast models, for example. So you can do as many additional scenario plans as you would like within any component of Tidemark. As well, Tidemark has some really unique predictive analytics capabilities that can really help you when it comes to kind of machine-generated forecasts, leveraging your historical data to then apply some predictive analytics on top of that to help you with your forecast modeling as well. We have another question around once installed, who does the configuration of the system? And the way that works at Tidemark is when you become a customer at Tidemark, we of course engage with you with our customer success organization to do the initial implementation. So on the front end of the implementation, the bulk of the heavy lifting, if you will, is managed by Tidemark. But it is our intent over time that we make you self-reliant as a customer. So even as part of the implementation, as we get to the tail end of the implementation, our customers are actually doing some of their own configuration. So it really happens on a continuum through the implementation process. But then once you're live and you have Tidemark up and running fully in your organization, you have complete power to do all of the configuration yourself. Self-reliance, again, is a key tenet of Tidemark, and we really want to allow our customers to be able to manage their own environments without costly ongoing consulting engagement. There's another question around uploading data, and the question reads, you mentioned being able to upload data from SnapLogic or manually, and do you integrate with any other data sources? We actually are data source agnostic. We actually provide the capability to leverage any data within Tidemark. We're not limited to just financial data. It can also include any other operational data. SnapLogic is really the pipeline that facilitates the transfer of that data from your existing systems to Tidemark. They are a very comprehensive integration, cloud-based integration platform that has predefined what we call snaps to link with many existing systems, but also the ability to create custom snaps. There's some questions around average implementation time. And really the best way to answer that is, it is Tidemark's goal to get you up and running and leveraging Tidemark as quickly as possible. With most organizations, our customers will be using a component of Tidemark within 60 to 90 days. We want you to have quick wins, and then we can incrementally increase your capabilities with Tidemark over time. So you don't have to wait and do a big bang implementation. You can start on that business process that is most important to you, that is going to provide the most benefit to your organization, for example, profitability. And then once you have that available, then you can continue to enable the other Tidemark applications, which are included in the cost of the platform, incidentally, as needed within your organization. Okay, I think those are all of our questions today. So with that, we will conclude this webinar. Thank you very much for your time and your attendance. And I would like to highlight that there is a link here in the middle of the screen, the short bit.ly URL in the middle of the screen that provides a link to a BPM Partners white paper on managing profitability. We will also be sending you a follow-up email after this webinar that will also include a link to this white paper. Again, thank you